Okay, so now the last thing that I really want to accomplish in this video is to allow you to be able to log in and create accounts. So first, let's do a little bit of work on that auth stack. So here we are on the auth stack. Here we have our home screen. Right now we have next page, which doesn't really make sense. So this button is going to be called login. And this button is called create account. And that's going to navigate through my create account screen, and this is going to execute some login functionality, which is actually a login. And we'll do the login first, since we already have. Let's get this consistent here. Login, create account. We'll do the login first because it's more straightforward, and I think we have some accounts to play with for login. One of the other things that we're going to introduce at this point is we're going to introduce using React Hook Form to do our form validation, and we're also going to bring in Yup. And Yup is a library that's used for kind of creating schemas and validation errors. And for those of you who aren't familiar with React Hook Form, I have a bunch of videos on that also, which I will post. But let me see what we got. And so React Hook Form is format flexible, extensible forms with easy to use validation. It can be used on the web, and it can also be used on React Native, which is what we're going to do. We're going to need to install a couple of libraries to get this to work, but this is what React Hook Form is. And then the other thing that we're going to use, npm yup. And so we're going to use this. Yup is a JavaScript schema builder for value parsing and validation. We're going to use Yup because you can use Yup with React Hook Form. And then the last thing that we need is in implementing this, we found there were some challenges. Where are my notes on that? Yup, React Hook Form. There's a known error with React Native and Supabase that we're going to run into that requires us to use another package, which is this guy, a React Native URL polyfill. It has to do with the way Supabase does some queries. We need to load this in, and what will happen is this will address the problem. I have linked in the video a long blog post that explains to you what's going on and why you need it. I'm not going to cover that here in the video. You can read the documentation, but I'm just letting you know you will need to install this to make sure that Supabase works fine with you. And so let's start to load up some of these libraries that we need, and let's start with this first one, which is, as I said, this native URL polyfill. So where did it go? So let's add that. Let's add Yup. And then the last one is React Hook Form. I believe now we have all the libraries we need installed. So let's start to put together our login screen that we're going to need here. As usual, any of the styles and things that I add, I will just kind of add them in. I'm not going to kind of walk through creating styles in React Native. It's beyond the scope of what we're trying to accomplish here. But there's a lot of stuff going on in this part to kind of set up this form. And as I set it up, I'll walk through and I'll explain it to you, and also explain all the code that I'm using. So in our form, we know that we're going to need some inputs. So, and then I also need some styles. So let me kind of bring in my styles now. What I've done is I created a completely separate, like inside the screens directory, I just created a styles.styles.js. So we have a styles.js, and then inside of there, sorry, let me fix that. And then inside of here, I've just pasted all the styles that I'm using everywhere. So let's rename this to styles.jsx. So now I can have access to all these styles. And so let's go back here. So, and let's delete the styles from the bottom here since we're using the imported ones. And then let's add our styles import up top here. So import styles from styles. Find variable text input. Oh yeah, we need to, let's import the text input from React. Where did that go? Sorry, from React Native. And okay, let's comment out the error text for now because I'll cover that in a minute. Okay, so we have our input form, and we also now need, this is our email address, and now we also need our password form. Our password form field. So let's get that guy in there. And once again, we'll comment out the error because we'll address that later. So now I have my two fields, my input and my email address and password. Those are the two required fields that you need for logging into Supabase. The other thing that we want to do is let's clean up our buttons. We have a nice styled thing for buttons that I've created, so let's drop those in. Let's bring the imports. We need our touchable opacities that we're using to kind of wrap our buttons. And what else? The handle submit. So let's comment that out for now. I don't want to do that. Let's do this. Okay, so now we have our login screen, and we want to be able to enter our email. Oh, we got to add some additional functions, so let's get back. Let's dismiss. We want to be able to enter our email and our password, hit login, and log in. So with React Hook Form, let's do our React. Let's see if I can get some more space here. Let's format this. And so now we need to import some React Hook Form code. And I'll walk through it and try to explain it, but like I said, there's separate videos that kind of cover this in a lot more detail, which I'll link below. So first thing with React, well, let's actually get all the React Hook Form inputs that we need. So, and I've kind of put a little comment here. So for React Hook Form, we need our yup resolver, which I don't think I installed. We need yup, and then we need our use form hook from React Hook Form. So let's go back to our node. Let's do a refresh. Okay. So now we have that. Next thing is we need to actually set up our schema. And what we're doing with our login schema is we're just kind of laying out what are the fields that we're going to use in our form. And so we have our email field is of type string, and we check it has to be a valid email, and this is the error message if it's not a valid email. And then it also needs to be required, and this is the message if it's blank. And then for password, right now we're just checking it's a string and it's required, and this is the error message for it. So this login schema kind of lays it all out for us. Then the next step is what we need to do is we need to go into, we need to kind of lay out in our login the things that we're going to utilize from React Hook Form. And so let's go into my login function, kind of lay that out for us. And yeah, that's what I thought. I did not install my yup resolver, so let me install that now. I was looking at it, I was like, I don't think I added that, so let's put it in now. Let's copy that. Let's go to our other window that I have open. Put our resolvers. Oh, I got a little carried away. You don't need the whole thing. Hook form resolvers, I believe, is correct. There we go. So just hook form resolvers. Now let's go back to our main terminal. Let's kind of refresh all this, make sure everything's good. All right, everything's good. Now let's kind of explain. So I already told you how we laid out our login schema here. And what we're doing here in our use form, we have some things we need set up. So one, we're saying here's how we're going to resolve or validate any errors, and we're going to use our login schema from yup. And then down here, I'm defining the default values for the form. And right now, it's the email and it's the password. Okay, so now how we're going to connect the React hook form to our actual form fields are, we're just going to use the register function. And so we can just do use effect. And there's no dependencies. And then all I need to do is just kind of register the fields. All right, so now the fields are registered with React hook form. And then the last thing that I'm doing is inside of the onChange text for as you're typing in the fields, I'm using this set value function from React hook form to set the value that we're getting from the input field to the property in React hook form. And so I'm doing it here for the email, and then I'm doing it down here for the password. And so I'm using register set values. So the other thing I need to handle is the handle submit. The handle submit is called before. The handle submit is basically how React hook form is verifying your data. And if everything's successful, then it will call the follow-on function, which for us will be a login function. If it's not, it'll just generate some errors for you, and you can render those errors on the screen. The get values is how you get the values based on the key back from React hook form. So you can see the values we have are email and password. We'll use those in a login function. But for now, we're not using reset, we're not using control, so let's kind of comment these two out because we're not using them. We'll remove them later if I'm sure we're not using them. But for now, let's kind of integrate the handle submit with our do login function. So I commented out the handle submit before because it was causing some errors. But now that we have React hook form in, let's kind of put our handle submit back in. But what it's really looking for is our do login. So let's go up here and add our do login function. Function do login. And this is going to have some information passed into it, but for now, we just want to put it there, and let's console log the information. Well, let's do this first. Let's just get the values back. Actually, let's not do it that way. We're going to get some data here passed into us. And the data should be all the values we need. So let's do console log data. And so that's our do login. So now we've activated our handle submit and our do login. So let's see what we get. That's not what I wanted. Terminal. Let's reload. Did I set this right? Touchable capacity, login. Okay, I'm getting errors. Oh, let's render our errors so we can see what's going on with our errors. Right now, just console logs data, but I can also say console dot log. And up here, one of the things I'm pulling off of my use form is this form state, and the form state gives me back errors that are actually happening. So I can go down here and just have it dump out my errors. So you can see the error that we're getting right now is that this is not a valid email address. And so that's why it's not submitting. So let's just go in here and make this a fake email and now do login. And I got no errors, and it gave me back the results of my input form. And so this is the values that I want to pass into my login function. So let's go back up and actually do something with these values. So we'll leave this in here. So let's leave this in here to show us what the errors are. Actually, we don't need this because we're gonna fix this in the next section also. Actually, let's fix that now. So I commented out this function that I wrote that renders the errors, and you just saw that the output from the errors. Let's scroll this up so you can see it. You get this error objects and it has a key value pair, and so if there's an error with email, the key is email, and the object contains the message. And so what we're going to do is, I've already wrote this function, but we're going to drop this function in. Let's kind of put it outside of here. And what this function will do is it will render the email, it'll render the errors for you very nicely. Okay, so this is a function called error text. You pass it in the errors object, and then you pass it in a name, and then it kind of will render it out nicely for us. And what it does is it says, all right, the error object, based on the key that I'm getting passed in, is there an object that exists? If there is, then find me the message and render the message. So let's kind of add this to our application. We already commented it out. Let's kind of put it back. So let's put it back in there, and let's put it back in there. And let's clear out our forms. And if I do login, let me refresh this. Let's see if we can get some errors to show. So login, why are my errors not showing? Error text name. My errors, oh, I didn't save, so let's save. Okay, there you go. Email is required field, password is required field. So let's change this. So now I put some text in, hit submit. But now it's telling you, you have something, but the email is not valid. So now let's make it valid. So now we got a good one. And then let's enter a password. Now everything's good, and we get our data passed in. So our form validation is working how we wanted it to work. But now we have to actually do something with login. And this is where we're just going to leverage the Supabase API again. So let's go down here into our login function. So we know we have our data, and what we can do is we can say await supabase.auth.signIn, and let's look at sign-in takes an email, a password, for all these other things. We're just going to, because they're all optional, we're just going to pass in an email and a password. All right, and so we can do this, and so if you notice, the data that we got passed in already is the object that we need. It contains an email and a password. So we're just going to pass the data object straight through to Supabase for the login. So we can just say data like this, and that will pass it in, and it should log us in. Now, the thing that we also want to do is we want to get some error. If any errors happen or anything like that, we want to be able to handle them appropriately. So let's put some code in place to handle any errors that we get appropriately. So to do that, we're going to have to get our response from Supabase. So let's say const response. And so that'll give us our response back from Supabase. And then based on that response, we want to display the appropriate error message. And so to do that, we can look on the response object that comes back, and based on that, determine if we need to display an error message or not. Nice way to do it is we can, so here's a response, we say if response error, then here we're going to render an error and then return. Render error. And it's complaining because this, let's see, await is async, so let's make our function async. Oh, sorry, it goes over here. All right, that's how you do it. All right, so now we have our do login function. Here's our API. If we get an error, we want to render the error. So let's just do a console log error. This would be error. Actually, no, we need this guy. So let's take this response.error. Error dot message. So let's just try and log in and see what we get. So there's our error. It's saying invalid credentials, but it would be nice to kind of render a nice alert to display what's going on. So I've done that for y'all, and I'm just going to drop that code in and kind of walk through what we're doing there. It's a pretty short function. Drop this up top here. And what we're doing is, let's put a little space on it. Put a little space above this guy. What we're doing here is we're going to pass in a title and a message. We're going to use the React Native alert element. So let's go up here and make sure we add that. Where did it go? Native LERT. We add that alert down here. So now we have our function. Where did my alert function go? Actually, let's take this alert function out of the screen and put it at the top level. So let's go outside the screen and put it right here. These will all get moved to a helper library. So now we can go back down into our function, and if an error happens here, let's use our error alert, and it's looking for a title. Let's say error logging in user, and then it's looking for a message, and then we can just pass in this message. Let's try to log in, and we get error invalid login credentials. So we're getting our error message. And then now let's just to confirm that it works. I believe the user was UUU, and I think the password was. And the cool thing that you can see is it actually logged me in because I switched now back to my main route, and my email's back here. I have no profile information yet. I'll work on that in probably the next video. This one's getting kind of long. And I'm where I need to be. And then I can log out to get back. So this one we covered a lot of stuff. We introduced using Supabase login functionality. We introduced the Supabase, actually we showed it log out last time. We brought in React took form, and we brought in yup for field validation. The last thing that we want to do is we're going to work on the create account screen, because when we create the account, not only do we want to create the user in Supabase, but we also want to save some additional information in the user profile. And is there anything else we want to do there? No, we just want to save the profile information and do a create account form. And then what I think the other thing that we'll do is we'll pull the profile information back out like I did, and we'll kind of show you the information that's saved there. And so that's what we have coming up next.